That's how you do it.
Hello, and welcome back to World Hoppers, a collaborative channel where we donate all AdSense revenue and merch to charity. And I'm here with these lovely people to talk about Brando Sando, which I know many people have been chattering about on the interwebs with these recent, I'll call one an article and the other one some words written about the very popular fantasy author, which I'm sure many of you know. So yeah, we're just going to discuss it. For old time's sake, just introduce yourself. I'm Jess. My channel's Jess Owens. Sometimes I read, not often, but yeah, I make videos sometimes. Anyway, Roger.
I'm Roger from Rogers Reads. I like to pretend that I read more things than fantasy, but it is a lie.
That's a lie. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Angela, Literature Science Lions. I read like 60% speculative, and it is about half and half fantasy and sci-fi.
I'm Alyssa from Nerdy Nurse Reads. I used to read a lot more fantasy.
Yeah, you've been on the lit side lately.
I've been infected with lit fic. But yeah, it's probably like 60-40 at this point between like all SFF and
oh my god, lit
it's like
really in our midst.
So much lit fic, and I'm not even blaming Lit Bro for all of it. Like
Ooh.
It's just
there's nothing wrong with that if you're enjoying what you're reading for the most part.
I do enjoy what I'm reading for the most part. It's kind of it's also kind of fun trying to pretend I'm a lit bro.
Like, yeah, that's really enjoyable to me. And I love when Katie takes your videos and makes shorts with it, because I just love Katie in general.
Yes. Half the stuff that comes through is just me and Katie shitting around with stuff. Because it's funny. He'll be like, you should really read this. I'm like, okay, I'll read Gravity's Rainbow. And he's like, I can't believe you actually read that.
Oh my god. Wait, have you read, not on topic, but have you read
I have Infinite Jest?
Yes.
I'm starting that tomorrow.
Why didn't you tell me so we could buddy read it? You know I'm not in the mental capacity to read it.
Well, that's the next big Lit Bro project, is to go through Infinite Jest. Lit Bro must read Infinite Jest.
I picked it up like a couple weeks ago and I was like, wait, I forgot the print was so, like, it's already chunky and then the print is like...
I'm grateful for anything that's better than Gravity's Rainbow as an experience.
Ooh,
so
don't say that on the internet. Be careful.
I already did. It's fine.
So we have established cred in terms of someone who understands what good books are. We have Alyssa here to tell us that Sanderson is trash.
Allegedly, I know what books are. I know what makes a good book.
It was alleged that I knew what books are. So in terms of books in Sanderson, how many Sanderson have you read? Because I've read not all. So I've only read the first two in The Way of Kings, almost all but the last one in Mistborn, and then like 3 of the YA ones. So I've read a fair amount of Sanderson. Alyssa, I feel like you.
Oh, I'm here for the dissenting vote or whatever. I've read 2 Sandersons. I don't technically have anything wrong with him as an author. I the whole Mormon church skeeves me out, and I really don't like the idea of tithing. And I know he's made like strides in his more accepting views and being a little bit more liberal, but I still I get the uncomfies, and so I just don't. I go put my money other places, but I don't have any real criticism of him particularly as an author. I read Mistborn, the first one. I did not finish the trilogy, and I read Skyward, that's the young adult, and I liked them both. I started to get stuff, and it was too much for me, and so I'm like, I can't support it. But the tithing in general, and that comes up in the second article a bit. It's the tithing aspects of the Mormon Church just really give me the uncomfies. So
I like that better than the ick. I'm gonna say that.
I'm uncomfortable. So yeah,
valid.
I've read everything but Cytonic and whatever his middle grades are, like his Alcatraz and Rhythmatist. Yeah. And I haven't read White Sand. And Roger, I was noticing for your Cosme read along, we're supposed to read White Sand, and I don't know what version, and I'm not excited. Because I think we're supposed to get a new version, so I feel like we're reading it at the wrong time. But I don't know. I've been reading Sanderson since 2005. So when I picked him up, I was a child. I was a teenager who didn't know that the Mormon Church existed. I'm fairly certain. Like if I were to ask 13-year-old Angela, I think she knew that people were Christian and that there were different types of Christian. But
oh my God, such a sweet angel. Well, I had
I know,
a
I think like I
friend in
knew
middle school who was
Catholicism was a
Mormon.
thing because we were almost Catholic for a while, and then I was a Unitarian, and I knew there were Presbyterians
Mm-hmm.
because that was like my neighborhood, and then I knew like Judaism was a thing because we had a lot of Jewish people in Cleveland, but like that was it. Like I didn't know a lot, and I will say that actually until last year, I mean, I know people give money to their churches. Like I knew that was like
Mhm.
a thing that a lot of large religions do.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't actually know about tithing and like the percentage marks. And like, so definitely since my last purchases from Sanderson, I've learned a lot. And it does, unfortunately, even though I am like a huge fan of his works, I've been reading them for like decades of my life. So it's like I'm unfortunately not where Alyssa was, where it's like, oh, this could have been a fun time, and then like eek because you learned uncomfy things. I'm
You're
like
deep.
You're
like
deep.
really
No, it's
deep things.
hard. It's
Yeah.
hard when you get really deep. And I actually put out a video about that today about like how does that change, right? When you're
Yeah.
really invested in something, like how much can you kind of almost put up with, I guess, or stomach?
Yeah, and like
Because
and
you're
everyone has
so
to answer that
it's so
question for
personal.
themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but I haven't read the Esquire article that we're also going to be discussing, but and I didn't click on the Wired one, but I've seen enough people talk about it, and I've seen the videos where people like read it and respond.
I watched Daniel Green. I don't need to read it. He read it to me.
That's the one I watched too. It's like I will not click on this article. I refuse to give it a click.
I also just liked watching him kind of spiral. It was kind of
That was kind of
it was
funny, yeah.
entertaining. Yeah.
So I do know what's in the Wired, which is unfortunate because I actually like the Wired. Like I read a lot of their science for lay people. Also, my cat's yelling over here because he's also upset. And I just read that and I'm like, if you were going to go in, why didn't you go in on the tithing? Like there is stuff there.
Mm-hmm. It was
He
weird that that's not
covered
where he went to. We
nothing
could talk
of
about it more.
importance. Like
Yeah.
you could have said, so you could have had so many different discussions and asked so many questions, and yet he was like, "This dude's lame, man." Like
His
okay.
showers made me cry, which I don't get. But anyways, tangent. Roger, how much have you read?
I've read everything in the Cosmere, and then I've also read all of the Cytoverse that's currently available. So I haven't read his like other sci-fi series, the like X-Men one, and I haven't read any of his middle grade stuff. So I've read a fair amount at this point. But I also only found him because of BookTube. I think before I started watching BookTube, like 2 years ago, I had no idea who Brandon Sanderson was. So like at the beginning of the Wired article, I thought it was funny because I was like, well, I can kind of relate because I didn't know who he was until I joined BookTube and like started watching people's videos. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll check him out. And then it was a deep rabbit hole from there. I'm also like woefully ignorant about everything about the Mormon church and the tithing stuff. So like I haven't really peeled back those curtains, and now I'm kind of afraid to do so because it's like
it's I really fully understand in the last like 5 years like the statement ignorance is bliss. Like I knew what it meant before, but I really understand that being in the book community online.
Sometimes you just don't want to know.
Yeah,
like
I'm like,
just want to read a book.
Yeah, and obviously I can't unlearn all the things, but yeah, it's just like if it's over there and I pretend I don't know, and I just want to enjoy the thing. It's really, it stinks. But so there are 2 articles written about Brandon Sanderson, which I didn't read it until recently, but I remember starting to see, I saw like Petrick and I saw like other people like this article is disgusting. I was like, oh my God, what? Because Sanderson doesn't really do anything. Like you would think it was like, I don't know, he was caught out doing something salacious or something ridiculous. And it's like, the article kind of explains what he does. He like hangs out at home and plays Magic the Gathering and watches movie in his lair. But it was really, I just think, regardless of the person, I mean, maybe if it was a certain author, I don't know. But that's not the point. Is that it was just it seemed so nasty. Like it just set out to be rude. Like you went to visit this man, do all these things with him. You get to go in his house, in his movie theater where you cried to the showman or the greatest showman or whatever. And then to write the piece just talking about his clothes aren't like these ill-fitting clothes and he's just a lame dude and nothing was exciting. And I'm like, well, then this should have been a paragraph. Why is it so long?
I think the part that was annoying to me because like making fun of a millionaire, fine, whatever. He's rich, he's fine. But he was making fun of the fans, and I'm just like,
yeah,
that's a lot of people to make fun of, and it did it in like such an elitist way, and I'm never here for that. It's one thing to not like what Sanderson does as a craft, that's fine, but the way he described the fans at the convention,
as if there's not like there's New York City Comic-Con, like there are nerdy people everywhere who love nerdy things, and they go to conventions and they dress up and they name their kids after their favorite characters, and he's like, I just don't, what is it about him? And I'm like, that's just what I envision him, just people being like, I mean, I really love the characters, and being like, okay.
He kind of sounded like he would have been the mean jock or something in high school who was just making fun of the nerdy kids. Like, it doesn't matter that Brandon Sanderson kind of dresses a little bit like a slob every day. Like, I don't care. He still has made more money than you'll ever have in your entire life, sir. Like, it doesn't matter that he's wearing whatever he wears. It doesn't matter what he eats. It doesn't matter. Like, the fact that he goes in, instead of actually, I don't know, examining the Mormon church, like you said, asking about tithing or going into anything that has any substance, you just went, he's a weirdo Mormon. Well, that's not the way to discuss something in an intellectual or like
at all. I mean,
that's not journalism. That's just,
there was nothing like, I am a terrible writer and I think I could have done better, because it's just like, besides even Mormonism, like someone brought up on Twitter that it's interesting. Obviously, he has all this time to write because of the support that he has from women in his life. Like, there's things
you could talk about.
Yes, and he was like,
just weirdo Mormon. It's like, it just
bored me.
It undermines any potential argument that's like has any weight or validity, like immediately, because you just everything was very childlike. I feel like he was very.
You did no
nasty for no reason,
and just like, you're going to go talk to this person, do some background, and that you would see everything that you said in the article. You see his YouTube videos, he's always wearing that outfit. This is what he plays.
This is him.
Like,
I look like this 24/7. Like, I don't like walk from people.
I got to meet Sanderson in 2015. Can confirm it's that blazer. I'm sure he has more than one, but can confirm. And he's way taller than you think he is.
So I'm like, sir, okay. And
except for Roger, he's way shorter than Roger thinks he is. Because Roger is way taller than all of us think he is.
Roger,
wait, how tall is Roger?
6'7".
Holy shit!
I felt like I was like 6 foot. 6 foot. Oh gosh, how tall is Sanderson?
Not 6'7", I don't think.
Roger would actually probably make me feel dainty. It would be nice. We should hang out. We should get a coffee so I can feel small.
I think based off my memory from when we took a picture and how I experienced tall people, Sanderson is probably taller than 6 foot, but nowhere near 6'7", like maybe 6'1" is my guess. But it's not like he's an actor, so I can't like IMDb this.
You probably can. We're gonna Google this.
I always do that. I'm like, how tall is Sanderson?
So
I must know.
I want to just speaking about like taking him through his house and all this stuff was really clear in the article that I think was unintentionally clear, is just how gracious Sanderson actually was. You know, the amount of things that he was doing with this guy that then he turned around and wrote was basically like a hit piece. It seemed.
Yeah. I'm like, he
like taking him to an amusement park with his kids, and he's like, "Oh, I was making fun of him with his child about how many people came up to ask him for a signature."
Like, it's so weird. It's
like everything, the fans, his fam, like, he was just like, everyone sucks around this dude. You're like,
his writing group, how dare they have chips and a like little crisp bake thing? Boring.
Where's the fancy charcuterie? I was just like, because I've had a couple friends who've met Sanderson like outside of a book signing, and I always hear really positive things. And you know, he has his fortress, his land with his underground, blah blah blah, and he's getting to go around all these things. I'm sorry if you didn't like the food. Like, that's wild to me to spend all of that one-on-one, or not one-on-one, but like time with someone in their family and the people they work with, and then be like, yeah, well, let me sit down and write this and blast them all.
And how it doesn't even fit into his theme. Like the you know, this article is supposed to have a point, and maybe it does, I have no clue, but like the tangents we go on to get to the ending sentences.
I really want to know what, like, when he set out, what was his like, I want to know what the goal or what he thought, what the angle was supposed to be, besides just being mean. Because, like you said, where was the point?
Sidebar:
What
the
did he-
internet says he's 5'8", 5'9".
He's
Shut
not.
up.
I have pictures of him next to me.
I'm just saying
is
that's what
not.
the internet says. It also says he's like 83 kilograms. I think they are.
Okay, here's the thing. My fiance is
It sounds like people
5'7".
who are
I'm
trying to convert
intimately
from metric
aware
and
of what
failed to do
5'8"
so.
feels like, and he is 2 heads taller than me. I'm 5'2".
I'm just saying that's what the internet said.
But I saw that too, and that's why I couldn't look it up, because I'm like, I saw that and I'm like, I know what 5'8" looks like, and that was not 5'8".
Just
Anyway, so what was
But I
the
think
point of
he
the
was
article?
I think that the author wanted Sanderson to give him these really loquacious quotes that he didn't have to work to write this article.
mhm.
And when that didn't happen, and he was too just kind of casual and colloquial in the way that he talks to people, because that's who he is. He's just kind of like a chill dude who likes to nerd out about fantasy things. The author was like, "Oh fuck," and
Yep.
then started like,
He's like, I have to write this myself. He wanted like standout lines to just like put, when they put like quotes in the big letters and then the rest. That's what he wanted. He'd be like, oh, I'll just have to add a little bit. And then there's one quote that he was like, I've never seen Sanderson see this anywhere. I was like, well, that's my least favorite. You could have left that out. I did not want that. Whatever that quote was, I can't remember. It was like, well, God is working on me. I'm building something. I can't.
It was like, as God made people, I make stories or something.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
like random.
Like his relationship to his faith and how what makes sentient life and faith, creation and stuff like that. I don't know. It felt
Yeah,
like a quote taken out of a weird context.
There was some connection between God and making fantasy stories.
And that Brandon Sanderson is our God. And like, I guess
Is he?
no. I mean, maybe to some people. I'm sure there's some people who are really deep with
But there's some people that are like that with everything.
yes,
though.
Star Wars, Star Trek. There are, there's layers to fandoms.
I'm going to say right now, and I'm not going to say what's in this story, so no one be worried. I'm reading Secret Project 2 right now. This man is not my God. This man has a quirk for this main character that I'm about to punch through the face if he does this thing one more time.
Oh,
And Roger knows what it is. It has to do with Yelp reviews, and I'm done with it. I'm so done.
oh.
That's
Can you hear that rain? It just started pouring outside.
okay.
Anyway, but
It's
yeah, that
ASMR
quote
time.
was like, I don't know. He's not my God. I enjoy his books, but again, I have a weird. I have that little uncomfy that I'm like, what? I don't want to think about it. But I liked what I saw in the Esquire one. That it did seem like a legitimate piece that was talking about. It starts from the beginning. If you don't because this guy in the Wired one says like how no one knew who Brandon Sanderson was, which is valid. If you're really not in the book world, like he's huge to us, but my mom wouldn't know who he is. Like Andrew only knows who he is because of me. But this person starts it off like, so if you didn't know who he was, it'd be like, this is how he started writing, and he went to. You'd be like, oh well, now I'm getting a grasp of who this person is, instead of just being like, so yeah, I was sitting across from this loser. And
this is a weirdo.
yeah, like he starts. I feel like it was like actually a piece of journalism, and then talking about also he got to see the home, the lair, the million things, and I mean, also you could critique money. Like, yeah, he makes a ton of money. Do I think he needs all that? No, but then also, to be fair, he has like a 60-something person team that he has to pay. I'm hoping they're getting paid very nicely. So I don't know. There were so many people online when like the Kickstarter happened last year who were like, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe you people are spending your money and just.
I mean, the Kickstarter was a bit ridiculous. If you're outside the fandom and watching the amount of money, I'll say that I found it really uncomfortable because one, it was like the Ukraine, like the whole everything with Ukraine was happening.
Mhm.
So I apologize. It's not the Ukraine. That's incorrect. I have to beat that out of my old lady lexicon. But but everything was starting with Ukraine and everything over there, and that kicked off right in the middle of it. And to see all that money getting generated that quickly, and also for me personally, knowing how a portion of that, whether he makes it clearer in this article that like, oh no, it's just my personal finance, but your personal finances come from this thing.
Yeah.
And like, that's how you funnel down to tithing to something that makes me uncomfortable. And it's a very personal thing that makes me uncomfortable, which is why I don't go on the internet generally and go like, I don't like Brandon Sanderson because he's bibbidi
And also,
boo,
would
because
be valid
that's the
because it'd
person.
be your
It's personal.
opinion, and not you spending all this time with him and then going and write an article, which I think is valid because I saw a lot of people talking about that with Ukraine. And some people I feel like framed it like we were just giving money to give money as if we were not getting something in return. I'm like, it's not like we were just, it was a GoFundMe. We just weren't like, hey,
I think it was less about you guys, like the consumer, and it was more about not having anything like, holy crap, I raised all this money so quickly. I'm going to do X with a portion of it to sort of balance the optics of it. And I know that I guess he did later donate somewhere, but it just felt a little, sometimes he just comes off a little pompous and like, hey, I know it's been hard for everybody, so I wrote 3 books and give me money. And you're like, okay,
with that more books, but also I hated the video before that reveal with because so you were mentioning Ukraine in the context. For me, when this Kickstarter came out, 2 days before I'm defending my thesis, which is like, one of the most stressful days of my life, he has the thumbnail of like everything's not okay, his like April Fool's Day joke of all April Fool's Day jokes, and I was very angry at that video. It gave me an anxiety attack.
But he was like, it's fine. No one's dead. That later. Like, no one's hurt in my family. I'm okay. I don't know. And maybe I'm trying to, this is my defense of Brando here. But with stuff like Ukraine, I don't know. Like, not like we shouldn't donate to them, but it's also like, it always comes down to people instead of governments and systems. Like, it's always like, I feel like it's always us little people who have to like come together and try to do something. Like, people were like, you could have done, like, why are you telling me what to do with my money? Okay. I don't know. But
I don't think it comes down to the consumer, like, because we should be spending the money the way we want to. I mean, it's fantastic. Oh, because some people
Twitter
are stupid,
like,
but
because
Twitter's a scary place. I don't know how you guys spend time on Twitter.
I curated my feed perfectly.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, but Elon Musty has started ruining it. So I've been spending less time there, but I also hate Instagram and Facebook. So like, where do we go? TikTok. That's where I'm at.
Well, you only get TikTok for another month before we're in a dystopian future where the internet doesn't make sense anymore.
We were always in a dystopian future. I don't know why you thought we weren't.
They're bad.
I mean, like, yeah, we're in it. It's not future anymore. It's present.
The dystopian future only gets worse.
But I think it's interesting. The Kickstarter was wild.
We might want Brandon Sanderson to be our god to invent a new future for us.
Something. Give us hope. Like, watching the Kickstarter, because I remember I watched the like reveal or whatever live with a few people, and then we watched the Kickstarter go live, and I just watched it hit like $1 million in like,
it was super fast.
15 minutes. I was just like watching the numbers. I'm like, this is insane. So I've never witnessed something like that, but I don't know. Like,
I think it was just the response to people having all of their favorite entertainments, everything that they were using to escape the pandemic that we were in, being delayed,
Mm-hmm.
and then out of nowhere, something that many people find joy or escapism or comfort in was all of a sudden surprise available to them. And I appreciated that at least he went back and donated to basically every other literature-based Kickstarter that he could find. So like, at least he was also surprised by the response and tried to give back in his own way. Could he have probably given more or to more causes? Probably, but like,
but it was definitely in real time watching it was really.
It was wild.
It was weird, but I find the pushback on the consumer very. I don't like that because it's not like you guys are fans of something and fans want to, put their money into it. Think about like freaking how much Hogwarts stuff still comes out and everybody puts their money into it. Like people still love things. So you should be allowed to have your loves and put your money towards things that you love, even if other people don't agree with them. But it's what does the person on the other end who's getting the money do? And I think that that's a hell of a lot more important to.
I wish we could control it more because I still think even with people who are Sanderson fans may not necessarily be on the internet. So maybe they don't even have. They're just like, I know I like this author. When I see a new book, I read it. So maybe they don't even know the Mormon part. Like, I know there's people, when Joanne started foolery on the
Joanne.
internet. People in like real life, like I would start talking about this stuff and I'd be like, how do you not know? Because I'm like, my Twitter feed is the world. Everyone on Twitter, like everyone knows what's happening. And I would ask people, they're like, what? I don't know. Things like, I feel like now, I don't know. I would assume everybody would know, but maybe they don't. So yeah, it just
The
goes
number of
into
times our author drama doesn't make it to my friends is astounding. One of
it.
my friends' favorite books from last year was by Lauren Ho. So
When I mean, it rarely does. When it does, that's when you know you're like, oh my gosh, the regulars are talking about book drama. That's when it's like, oh my god, it's crossed the divide. It's crossed worlds. But normally we keep it. It's very right here, and I don't know. It's hard. I wish I could go back. Sometimes I miss not knowing the Bookternet existed because I found Sanderson through because I was Bookstagram first before I watched BookTube, and I didn't know anything back then when I read Mistborn Era 1, and then I've learned a lot that I did not ask to learn about a lot of people in the years of being on the bookish internet, and it's just like I don't know. It's hard.
yeah.
It is hard, and I don't think that the average consumer reads like we do, and I don't think that they care about the same things that we care about. I think they're just much more focused on the text itself. They're not
Yes.
focused on like, what is the author actually doing?
Let me
like
give you Google.
the
Speaking of
author
the
is
text,
probably irrelevant to some extent.
About
You're
Sanderson's
also
writing, 'cause
way
that was
too much up into authors' businesses.
Yeah.
Like we have no business doing
Yeah.
quite as much sleuthing as some people be doing.
Oh my god. And some authors be putting it out there and it's like, damn, you could have just been quiet and kept your money. But sometimes people are like, well, I was digging through these screenshots from 2016 and this one day, and I'm like, oh my god.
Well, I will say that that's one thing I think that Brandon Sanderson has done really well as in compared to other people is, he had that essay or whatever he wrote where he made comments about being queer and how he doesn't support it. But he's never really, outside of that, I feel like he never just kept saying things. He kind of shut up and took feedback.
Not a
and
Joanne.
then he didn't Joanne it. He really took things in. And it does seem like he's internalized some of this and has been trying to think differently, shockingly. So I think that other authors could learn a little bit from that when you have a little scandal where you've put your foot into it. Maybe shut up for a bit. Learn.
When they say they're listening and learning, but
like actually shut up.
What's also interesting is how it's like in real time you can see how language hits differently and hits more uncomfortably in different times. I remember when that blog came out and we were all discussing it, but it was being talked about in the same way that all of us, at least in Ohio, were talking to our like conservative family to try to get them into the mindset of even civil unions for gay people because it was before 2015. So a lot of the language in the blog was stuff we were trying to use to like convert our extreme families into the neutral territory of just letting
people at least love each other.
So at the time, I didn't even think of it as like that big a deal because it was like all the language we were using. And then obviously reading it now, it's like, oh, that's really insensitive. It's just like in real time seeing how we progress on social issues and what languages like we've used and what comes in and out. It's really, in terms of history, really interesting to look at. And I am glad he is someone who like seems to grow. Doesn't seem to grow enough to realize that his church does actively fund things that are bad for people in the LGBTQ community.
It's like, I don't know, religion is such a weird thing. I think, and again, this could be coming from a defensive fan standpoint, but because I know that the Mormon, I feel like I know too much about the Mormon church, but that's because me and Mara are always talking about anything Mormon adjacent. And so with that tithing, I think 10%, I feel like general Christianity, that's kind of a standard, but every denomination might be different. But
tithing's the 10% is kind of on like the average on the high for most.
Because I know my mom was like, "Are you tithing for who? For what? Tithing? I'm paying my bills."
That whole like prosperity gospel stuff. So like I narrowly missed becoming an evangelical. So I went to like Bible camp all my life, and then I almost went to like Bible college and then decided, no, I won't. So I feel like I really dodged a
You
bullet
did. It's
for
it's their
myself.
hope. They're
For
like, it's
myself, not
indoctrination. And he's older. So I guess you could say you should come to the realization, but there are, I don't know, I think all organized religions are a cult. If you don't like that, fight me, but you can't because I'm in a computer. I just think of, he's Mormon and we know it because he teaches at BYU. He talks about that all the time. But it's like, so if we didn't know it, does that change it? Because I'm sure there's a lot of authors, like I'm just thinking of one off the top of my head.
I mean,
Angie
isn't
Thomas.
Stephanie Myers Mormon?
She's a Mormon, yeah. So, and like Angie Thomas talks about
Nobody
God
liked
all the
Twitter.
time. And Christianity in
The Twitter
general is
Twilight.
oppressive and anti-LGBTQ. And it's like, so I don't know. I don't agree with him tithing his money, but I don't think he's not the only one.
No.
Tithing to churches, which are inherently the worst.
But he's probably the biggest one that I would be able to give money to as a consumer.
Mhm.
For me personally.
I'm
I'm
not
sure
gonna
there's
say
something
bigger
I never
ones
knew.
that like.
Well, I guess also I think some people might not even realize that the school he works at is Mormon. At least I was a very ignorant person. I knew for years he had these
BYU is
lectures. I just
like
didn't know. I don't know.
aggressively
I know
Morgan.
literally
Mormon.
0%
Morgan?
about Utah. I know so little about the schools
Oh,
out
I
there.
know
BYU,
so
that's
much.
just an acronym
I know
school.
too
I
much
went to
about
OSU.
Utah.
There's
About
like 3
Brigham
OSUs in
Young,
this country. There's LSU. There's like, for
Joseph
me, it was
Smith.
alphabet soup school. I was
No,
just like,
BYU is aggressively Mormon. And
That's
like,
the
I know that now, but
that's the
like
Mecca.
again, I've been
their
reading his blogs for
codes
like
of
years, and I just never
conduct
knew.
are borderline dehumanizing. Like they like turn people like you want to talk. Oh, wait, now this is true. We've derailed this chat, but like their codes of conduct, you're like turning people in for breaking the code of conduct.
Mhm.
It's like a little fascist state. It
She
is.
kissed a
terrible.
boy and they're not married.
She sipped coffee. She's in trouble. Like,
Also a plug, if you are an ex-Mormon or maybe just interested in stories of ex-Mormon, you should listen to Mormon Stories podcast, which they're like hours long, which I love, but it's people who have left the Mormon church and talking about their story. And they're just regular people, but it's very interesting because they're regular people and they all have such unique yet similar stories and ways they came to their decision to leave. Just very interesting. But but to Sanderson to be on video. One thing in that article in the Wired,
we can have another chat about Mormonism.
His writing, and I will be the first to say, and I said this in my video, that Sanderson isn't like, I'm not like, oh my god, his prose, it's so beautiful and rah, rah, rah. But I mean, he made it sound like the man's writing was, I see spot well, Kaladin see thing.
He
Like
also punched down on young adult at the same time as a whole writing, age group category that obviously everything he wrote was like young adult, which by the extension of the transitive property means young adult is trash. So,
but he also doesn't understand that writing at a lower reading level makes your books more accessible to more people. So it's
which is also why he made money, which was your question, right? Like how he made money.
I'm just like, again, sir, you're not all these things you keep missing that you could discuss and elaborate on. Instead, you're just like, his writing is god awful, especially the early books. Who's reading this?
Everybody's early books are shit. But I feel like so I read Skyward after reading a whole bunch of other random YA books, and I felt like he had probably the best vocabulary of everybody that I had read at that time. It felt the most adult of all the young adult I had read in terms of language choice and all of that. And I don't think it's fair to be like he's a shitty writer. I don't think he's a shitty writer. He could maybe info dump a little less, but like he's not a shitty writer.
Yeah, I'd be the first. I'm always like, this didn't need to be that long, Brandon. Like we could have cut that out. I just looked in the article. One of the things because he's talking about like how many things he's written and how fast he writes. He said most will hear this and think, at that rate, none of the words could possibly be any good. They'd be right. in a way, and that's what Sanderson agrees with. Like, I don't think he agrees with you that none of his words are any good, but he.
Well, that's why this article was shady, because it never really had direct quotes. It was
Yeah.
always out of context and paraphrased in a very convenient way to match exactly. Because he's like, Sanderson will obviously admit he's a terrible writer. I'm like, I'm pretty sure he did not say that. I'm pretty sure when you confronted him at his favorite Chinese restaurant and said, "You know your writing sucks, right?"
Yeah.
I'm sure he was just like, like, that's not agreement.
And he's like, I had to say it. His wife was right there, so I had to tell him, hey, your writing sucks and you're his biggest fan, so you're a big dummy. It's basically what I'm like, Jesus.
None of these social interactions sound remotely pleasant.
He went for the restaurant too.
I mean, he was slandering the food and the people. I was like, good grief. Like,
I'm gonna say, I feel like Sanderson was really gracious. This entire article paints Sanderson is actually like a really nice guy that like spent all this time with you and like opened up his home to you and did all this, and you're just like, he's a slob and weird. And
well, especially his response. Like his response on Twitter was so classy of like, please don't attack him. I respect him. He's another writer. He was doing what he needed to do. I don't agree. I don't appreciate what he said about me, but like, it was like, see, this is classy. This is how we agree to disagree.
Because Brandon Sanderson is good at his own PR. I will forever say that. He knows when to shut up. He knows how to say things when he says things. He's
how to interact. You know, like he does what works with him with his like live streams and signing and doing all that. But he just, I'm just like, you can critique or have your thoughts about maybe it's not elaborate or like really high level writing or whatever, and you could. Like, I would say you're not a good writer because
also, like, if you wanted to get into the weeds of why, like, so if I'm him, right? Apparently, he likes a certain style of prose. He briefly talks about the type of fantasy and sci-fi he kind of likes. I'd be like, well, then why didn't you ask? Well, these are formative things that I really like. What made you drift away from that writing style to approach the modern version? Like, there are questions you can ask that could lead to
I think, Angela, you're actually thinking like somebody who would do a legitimate interview.
Like a real journalist.
Not spend a day with somebody.
But, like, that's what I would do. Like, if I was focused on why this writing succeeds, which also, if he claims he reads, commercial fiction is always written like this.
Yeah. Hello.
The books you buy at the airport, this is how it's written.
To appeal to a mass amount of people. And it's like, do you really read? Can you read, sir? I'm questioning things.
I would be interested if he did like a whole series. Like, does he now take on like James Patterson and then I don't know, like Daniel Steele? Like, are you just gonna go for everybody?
He better not come for Nora Roberts because
Nora will clap back.
Oh no, not Miss Nora. But he's just like, I'm like, I don't think someone needs to be quotable because he's like, here's where I'll stop using Sanderson's words, written or spoken, against him. It's not fair. He's simply not, I'll say it again, very quotable. I spent days with the man. Like, do you need to have, I feel like if somebody, every other sentence they have is something, you're like, ooh, let me write that down. That seems fake to me. You're having regular conversations with a person. Everything's not going to be some like, oh my God, life-altering quote that you want to get tattooed on your ankle. I don't know.
Well, I also think I don't know what this person's like, but I don't want to meet him because I'm going to be judged up the hills and back by whoever this person is. But it's like, the way he's critiquing some of just Sanderson's natural mannerisms, like his response to fear and like emotion, like all of these things, which like as a kid, my friends called me a robot. So like that like hit a little. I'm like, why are you like most people are learning these days that we're all on some sort of neurodivergent spectrum, right? Like, I'm not here to say that Sanderson is or isn't, but a lot of nerds are. So that was just really insensitive, especially since a lot of nerds were going to be reading this. Like, don't judge a person for being how they are. Like, this was not hurting anyone that he's a little odd on roller coasters. Like, I don't get it.
It hurt him, Angela. He was offended.
But he has a high pain threshold, and somehow that's weird. Like, the whole thing with the dentist was so weird to me. It was the dentist, right? He's like, you don't get anything for you. Like, people have different pain thresholds. It's just science.
Like, why are you focusing? Did anyone read this before it was like, no one was like, this is what you got out of all that time you spent? This is what you came up with?
I mean, I think they read it and they went, fine, this is what you've got. Well, we're going to at least give it a really trashy title and everyone's going to click on it. So we're going to make our money at least. But this is trash.
But the Esquire article, like, it sounds like this person spent about the same amount of time, a similar amount of time with Brandon Sanderson. And the second article is really well researched. It's written like an article. It's shockingly an actual article about
he had real like good questions. I don't know. So Roger, you read the whole thing. What were like your biggest or like the biggest takeaways or yeah, from that one, the Esquire?
Well, I just appreciated the second article because I didn't know all the stuff that he had done back in 2007 on a blog that is now deleted and all of that nonsense. So I appreciated him giving like a more holistic view because he wasn't like kissing Sanderson's butt by any means. He did say like, I've read a lot of his books. I enjoy some of these books, but here's some other counterpoints. Here's some stuff about the Mormon tithing stuff. Here's some stuff about stuff that he said in the past about LGBT. Like I felt like it was just what I would expect from a journalistic article, which I think is one of the main problems that I had with the Wired article. It's not even that it was about Sanderson. Just like, I wouldn't want that written about anybody. Like, that's just mean-spirited. And I get that, like, the BuzzFeed era of clickability, like, negativity sells. And that was, like, the perfect personification of that. But, like, I remember people on Twitter being like, Brandon Sanderson's getting what's coming for him. And I'm like, that's just nasty and mean-spirited. And I don't really care if, like, this is quote-unquote normal for, like, popular journalism. It's just not right. Like, nobody should be judged in that way. Like, if you're gonna come for his art, come for his art. That's fine.
Yeah.
Give me more than like one paragraph about how his writing is so simple and repetitive or blah blah blah. Fine, do it. But like coming for his kids, his wife, his friends, his
it was a hit piece.
Clothes.
Yes, like nothing was. Here's like I've read some of his books and I don't maybe like you not even I don't understand why he's popular, but you could talk. I just like we've said all have brought up different things like, oh, you could have asked this or you could have expanded on this, and it really was just like I'm gonna be mean because I can.
And people try to give him the benefit of the doubt because they're like, oh well, he says he reads only fantasy, so people saying he's coming for the fantasy genre are just wrong. And I'm like, okay. But he says he read 17 or 20 of his books, but it doesn't matter because they're all the same. I don't think anybody who's actually read his books would say they're all the same.
No.
They're actually pretty different from one another.
And why would you keep going then? Like if you were just like, wow,
you
these
can
last
stop. Yeah,
8 books I read were all the same. You're gonna keep going? Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Was I the only one who kind of wondered maybe Branderson did something to this guy? Like somehow did somebody somehow like offend him? Like what ticked him off to the point? Because it honestly sounded like he kind of was a fan for some point. Like you don't read 20 books this big because
I don't get
dislike somebody.
But I don't think he did anything to him. I don't know if it was like just bitterness of like I hate things that are popular, which
did he write a fantasy book and it flopped? Is that what happened? And now you're like, oh my God, I don't like this
Brandon, and Brandon didn't read it. He was like, can you blurb my book? And he didn't read it. That's it.
He read 20 books. He's read almost everything, including the middle grade. I'm calling some strong bullshit on this.
Well, that's what I thought, because he was like, I read 17 or 20, but that's not the point. They're all the same. And I'm like, even like era 1 to era 2, people complain all the time about how different they are in tone and scope. It's like if you've read even 6 of his books, they're
probably
like if you read Skyward versus The Way of Kings, those are not remotely.
Skyward was nothing like Mistborn.
Well, when I was growing up, I was trying to get friends to read books I like, and I had Elantris or Mistborn as my starting points. This is pre-Way of Kings, and even then, how many people give Way of Kings as a starting point to a friend to read? That's not normal. I know people start there, but that's not like a normal starting point, in my opinion.
You could do it to your internet book friends.
Yeah, but like to your in-person friends, you want them to like finish a book and talk to you about it. And so, based off my friends' like tastes, I would pick Mistborn or Elantris because they were different. Because if they were the same, I would just do the same one every time.
It's just, I'm convinced now that it has something to do with writing, Alyssa. He wrote a book and he wanted.
I think we cracked it.
He wanted blurb it or publish it, something.
The Esquire article talks about how, what is his publishing company called? Dragonsteel.
Dragonsteel.
That like they're publishing more than just him, right? And how like other people there are writing things, and maybe he tried to get Brandon Sanderson to like back his work, and he was like, "No, I don't want your stuff." Maybe he left him on red,
and it wasn't that. His Kickstarter didn't meet the goal, and now
he didn't fund his Kickstarter.
Yep. It's something. It's got to be something, because this just doesn't make. This just doesn't.
That's just because it's the same thing I was saying. Because when I was talking to my husband about it, I was like, did he like leave him and make him walk to the airport or something? Like, what
Something happened.
that made it so personal?
But also, I feel like that it would have. I mean, it has to be something personal that embarrasses the writer, because obviously he would have had no qualms putting it in.
Mhm.
So maybe it is like the book because he feels embarrassed about it or something. Like,
World Hoppers out here spreading rumors.
World Hopper sleuths is more like it. We know we're gonna get to the truth.
another thing
The
though,
funny
that
thing
I
is-
disliked about the article was how irrationally jealous I was that he got to stay in the Elantris suite and got to be angry about it. And Elantris is one of my favorite books. And I don't even know what that
just
suite
wanna go to that
entails.
movie
It's probably just a boring like guest room or something, but it's like
I want to go.
His
to the
supervillain
movie
lair
theater.
looks super intense though, because the Esquire article had photos.
It's super intense looking. Like
I was like,
Yeah.
oh my! I want to go to the movie theater,
It's
and
like
I
his
want to
work.
watch. Let me think. What would I want to watch in there? I feel like I want to watch Steel Magnolias. Like I could just have my lady.
Like, you just
with
want to
surround
cry.
sound crying in there. Yeah, and maybe something else. I'll have to think about it. Like he'll ever invite me there.
that's what I mean. It's like, I don't know. I just felt really jealous because he got to like be at a rich person's house. And when you get to go live with rich people for any amount of time, it's a treat.
It is a treat.
Exactly.
I babysat these kids out in the Hamptons when I was like 11. It was phenomenal. I've never
Elite
seen such rich
vacation.
people in my life. It was great.
I would be in there just like in awe.
But Cook
and
would be
being
like, "What do
"Oh,
you
yeah.
want for breakfast?" And I was like, "I don't know. What can I have?"
Food you're offering me? Like I probably wouldn't get good notes for my article just because I'd be trying to bask in the richness. I'd be like, oh,
The
I'm
aquarium
sleeping
looks
in.
pretty sick, though.
Yes. Anyway, but besides because I didn't get through the entire Esquire article, I know he mentions or talks about the Mormon Church and tithing. Does he have any other like critiques or like not
He
negative,
sort
but
of
not
presents the facts of stuff. Like he talks about generally how tithing works and like positions the Mormon Church kind of very briefly in, I guess, the grand scheme of church tithing. And then he has some quotes from Brandon Sanderson where Brandon Sanderson makes it quite clear that the money comes from his personal funds, not from any of the publishing, like business funds. Like the business is not tithing to the church. That members are obviously, a lot of the people that work there are members of the church, and if they want to tithe, they can, but it's all coming from once it funnels through to their personal accounts.
I'm nosy, so I would love to know what his like personal.
Well, he made it
brand
very
is
clear
or
that
net
people
is.
who give to charity shouldn't be flaunting. He has a quote that's basically like, you don't talk about what you give to charity, essentially.
I mean,
He also talks about how one of his biggest regrets about his Kickstarter was that it cut out all the indie bookstores and stuff like that, because now they don't get to like get the book. And so like, I mean, it talks about pros and cons of all of it.
yeah.
I feel like it leaves you to make a decision for yourself as the reader, which is what a good article should
Versus
do.
the other one, it's like I think he's shit, and so should you.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate because I think the Esquire one, if I'm correct, what I saw was talking about like because Brandonson, good God,
Brandon
talks about publishing and wanting to change publishing, obviously having his own publishing company, and it's a huge deal. But then he also is publishing them with Tor, but is cutting out Audible, right? Because they're not
For 1 year.
I love. So like that's another thing the other one could have talked about, like his impacts on publishing, and what this means for the future. Because I know a lot of people are like, oh well, this is gonna change publishing. I'm like, this would not work for everybody. It's
not, but he is big enough where he could start to change the conversation at the table and possibly get certain things adopted. Like maybe everything he was saying in the article, because the Esquire article talks more about like actual, I guess, bullet points of thoughts that he had on how, things can change in publishing in New York. And I don't think that a lot of them could work. I think some of his things make sense, like putting out multiple price points of a book sort of simultaneously doesn't actually make sense for your average publisher. But I get his point, giving more access to your books. So there's things to talk about. There's things that he's bringing up that can lead to conversations that could potentially lead to change.
They would actually listen to him. He has the money and
he's a man
power.
with clout, so
market share, if you will. I don't know those fancy words.
Well, I mean, even with the Audible thing, say he doesn't move the needle at all by doing what he's doing with his Kickstarter. Bare minimum, I didn't know before I read his blog post on it how little authors get from their Audible things, even when they like. Now there's at least just I know how extra shitty Amazon's being. Like I already knew, right? Now I have like the numbers.
More. Like, now I have statistics.
And like I know I've told my family about it and they were like aghast.
Yeah.
Especially because my stepdad lives off of Kindle Unlimited. Like they don't make money off of him. He leaves like 30 books off of that a month.
They're and it's just like obviously there are authors who only publish through Amazon, so it's like not wanting to cut them off, but again, in things that there's nuance and multiple things to talk about. The multiple price points is interesting because sometimes, like when I've been abroad and looking for books, sometimes when I see a new release, they have both the hardcover and a paperback out.
I wish they did that here.
Yes, which would make, or I wish the US's policy was paperback first, then hardcover to make things more affordable. But prices are just like, there was an article, was it in Book Riot, that was like talking about the price of young adult books, because I'm like, excuse me, when did this become, this hardcover is retailing for $24 for a young adult book? Excuse me, what is happening here? I mean, just in general.
It's over $30 for a hardback now if it's over like 400 pages. It's murder.
Yeah. And a Tor.
Okay,
novella?
Tor is a different
Tor novellas.
I'm like, I understand.
Every time Tor's like, do you want this novella? I'm like,
no.
Yes, I do, because I don't have $30.
Yeah, like when the Tor, the company itself's like, would you like an arc of this? Would you?
Yes.
Oh yeah, give it to me for free because I'm not buying that. Are you? I bought one, and that was Ring Shout. The rest of them, I'm like, absolutely not. I'm gonna have to borrow that. This book is in 90 pages.
I did find out from a friend that they do actually put into account page length into the price of a book. Because if you do look at Tor books, they are more expensive when they're longer. It's just, I guess, the baseline price is like $20.
Oh my gosh, it is outrageous. But
it would
publishing in general is just like, I would hope his publishing can grow because there needs to be more competition in the United States. How we just saw that big thing with the Penguin Random House trying to acquire Simon and Schuster and all of that. But I just need these people at the top to spread the wealth, because that can solve, I don't know, all the problems.
It would be interesting to see a boilerplate contract for like a traditional publishing contract. It would be really interesting to see. And then like maybe like what does a debut author look like? And then what does maybe somebody more established? It would be really interesting if somebody could leak those two things.
Yes.
Wink, nudge, nudge.
Somebody, because we know Brandon's are very different with Tor. Like this is very different than even a seasoned author who's writing another book. But
most authors couldn't have their own publishing company and still have a contract with a traditional publisher. Yeah. That's not normally usually like.
It would be really interesting to see what is being presented to authors so that we understand when we have these conversations and we're like, well, why can't we have paperbacks? Perhaps there's a reason for it.
Well, have you seen, so the
based
author,
on how contracts are.
I keep mispronouncing their name, but the author of Iron Widow made a TikTok. Yes, because the sequel was supposed to come out this year and
they moved it right
next year. And so they made a TikTok because people are like, why? And they explained how the advance for this one was split up into like multiple payments, and it was only like I maybe think 14,000 USD or something. Like I could not live
not enough for them to live off of.
Yeah, so then they were making a lot of YouTube videos to support them, so they couldn't write this one, and then they did their middle grade book, and that one had a bigger advance, but still they didn't have enough time to write this one, so it's already just like. It's because this one you saw everywhere. So I think people would assume like, oh my gosh, the author's making all this money. And they're like, yeah, no.
The way that advancements work and everything, all of that, learning about that. Cause like there was one time on Twitter a couple years ago, it had to have been 2020. Cause it was when I was first on Twitter.
Publishing paid me?
Yeah, that whole thing when all the authors were doing that. And I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
But then there's somebody like Donna Tartt's first book. I think she got the largest advance at the time. And she was a debut author. And they gave her like $500,000 as an advance. And they didn't even have anything from her. It's not like she had any. This was for her debut
Some people
novel.
get so, because I know in that with the publishing paid me and stuff, I think Angie Thomas had like a 6-figure deal when she wrote The Hate You Give. It was like a bidding war between the publishers, and I just don't understand how that works. And then when that publishing paid me came out and you were seeing all the numbers or authors tweeting, and I don't know if y'all remember, but a bunch of booktubers read this book called like Kate May or something by this random white dude. He got like an $800,000 advance. I've never heard of the book, and all the people I saw read it like, this book is terrible
Because
so
it's
there's people like N.K. Jemisin or Roxane Gay who are getting these like maybe 20,000, 10,000,
really itty bitty numbers.
and then these people we never hear of who get like $800,000, and you're like, this book's terrible.
Which is why I'm not mad for Leigh Bardugo. I know some people for
Oh,
a
I
while
am.
were real mad, but I'm just like,
so
she's
mad.
not getting any of that money right away.
No, it's less about being upfront in that she owns a limit. But that's just my opinion. But you know, that's a lot of
Whatever. People, people being successful in fantasy, I'm just always going to vibe with, because we are not the successful genre in the bookstore.
no, that's romance actually.
It's romance and mystery and thriller. It ain't
Yeah.
us.
All
I
the
just
things
like-
that everybody looks down on.
I don't want her to write another Six of Crows book because the way her writing has gone is not working for me. Leave it alone, sister girl.
But we haven't found which person's writing is working for you lately, so maybe it will in like 4 months.
No.
Okay. There was a chance.
Maybe if you read Infinite Jest with me, you'll find out you are a lip row too.
Now, wouldn't that be the plot twist of the damn
You
century?
can steal some
No,
clothes from
the
Andrew.
real plot twist. The real plot twist would be if you whipped out House of Sky and Breath and loved it. That would
That ain't
be
happening.
the biggest.
There's no universe in which
That's
that's
not happening because I don't think. Oh, I don't know though, but that ending. I mean,
I don't
already
think that's
know
going
it?
to work
No,
for Jess.
I don't
Those
like it.
endings haven't worked for Jess for years with Sarah
No.
J. Maas, and she didn't even
I
like
know.
House of Earth and Blood, which most of us who like House of Earth
I'm
and
not
Blood.
reading it. I already know the ending. I'm not reading it. Now, if another one after A Court of Whatever in Flames, I may read that.
Well, we're gonna have to wait because it's next January where we get the 3rd book in Crescent City, and I think
Yeah.
it's the last book. No one's told me, surprise, we have a 4th book now.
So y'all
I
can
wouldn't be
have
surprised because
those.
there's 4 houses in the Crescent City.
I
world,
have
and she's
feeling
only
there'll
done
be
3.
4.
But I thought
Oh.
it's being sold as a trilogy still. Like, that's what they've been marketing it as.
That
So that's why I
doesn't
get
mean
confused. Like, I'm-
anything. They sandwich books in the middle of duologies all the time to like spread them out. So
They're like, bam, a quartet. And you're like, did it really need to be that though? But
you know what?
no
Stop
one
hating
edits
on
her.
things that bring people joy, Jess.
I know.
You're
how
just
dare
like the guy from Wired.
Ugh.
Okay?
the article worked. He got me to think like him. Oh.
Well, that's one of the parts that you probably want to go and read from the Esquire article, because the Esquire article was clearly written after Wired, because he
Mhm.
tried to email and interview the guy who wrote the Wired article and asked him, like, why did you read so many of Sanderson's books if you didn't like the writing? Were you surprised by the response to the story? And the guy only said, as I've said to others, the piece belongs to readers now. Just the level of pretension from Home Slice, who wrote this Wired article.
I need to know more about this guy, and I'm sure there's Twitter people that are going to be listening, and I would send to somebody all the backstory on whoever.
Well, even in the
guy is
article,
that wrote this article.
they were kind of making fun of it. He was like, I'm pretty sure he forgot to record for the first half, and so that's why he didn't actually have any quotes on how to make it up.
He's scrambling like, I gotta start
Because,
this
like, I
off
find it-
some way.
So Sanderson, he speaks a lot like how he writes, but he actually, like, he's been doing interviews for so long, even not with big papers. He has like his soundbite lines, like they do exist.
Oh my god.
Like he's
It's
got his Wheel of Time
beautiful,
story down to a
purpley-
quick 5 minute.
Yeah, I know
It's
the
cool.
aquarium's cool.
That's awesome.
No, I mean, I will almost always take an invite to someone who's rich if I am being paid in like food and housing and
Yes.
Yeah, just
Like,
let me
I
vibe in your space for a little bit.
I will
be
enjoy
happy.
that. Speaking, this is related, not related. I really want to go to the Dragon Steel convention.
See, that would require me to
Almost
fly
I
out
don't know.
west, and that's just so expensive.
Really?
Flying to the
You want to do
western
it with
part
all
of
those fleshy, body-odored fans, those nerd boy men?
Oh, that's something I wanted to talk about. I found it
Well, she
really
might-
like I felt like
Isn't that what he said in the article?
yeah, he called them all smelly.
Yeah.
And I thought it was incredibly pretentious. And this is why I feel like he was like the mean guy in high school, because I feel like nerds get so much dumping on us. I will include all of us in this.
Mhm.
And he says somewhere in the very beginning, he's like, even for a really nerdy magazine like ours, and I'm like, it's like you feel like you are the monolith of like nerdiness, and like
Yes.
this is the best kind of way to be nerdy is in your little like computery wired space. And no, there's a lot of us here, and you don't need to be like pooping on us because you somehow think
Felt
that
like
you're
the nerd
better
versus
than
geek
us.
fight that we don't need anymore.
Yeah.
No.
And I
It
like
felt like that.
that I liked that in Sanderson's response that he said that, what did he say? He said, I'm worried about the way he treats our entire community. I understand he didn't just talk about me, but about you. As has been happening to fantasy fans for years, the general attitude of anyone writing about us is that we should be ashamed for enjoying what we enjoy. In that, the tone feels like it was written during the 80s. Look at these silly nerds liking things. How dare they like things? Don't they know the thing they like is dumb? So I like that he talked about, because that really was like he was shitting on all. And he's like,
I went through this in middle school. I have spent years trying to recover from being made fun of for playing Magic the Gathering. I would like to just be an adult now. I'm 40 years old. Can I please just enjoy my life? Like,
no, Alyssa, incorrect.
no, I need
You
to
can't
shower
do
more.
Oh, you smell, you fleshy human.
You did tell me to wash my face before we got on here.
But yeah, I didn't like that. So suck it, Jason. We're nerds and proud of it. And sorry that your Kickstarter didn't get funded. Oh well.
Let's just start spreading rumors.
Yes.
And just because he reads other fantasy books does not give him an excuse to act like this.
Yeah.
People are like giving him a pass. They're like, well, he likes fantasy, so he's clearly not shitting on all fantasy. I'm like, did you read the full article?
No.
I honestly can't even remember what fantasy or sci-fi he said he liked. It just like
Me either.
Which one?
I don't
I
think
said
he
me
did.
either.
He
I don't
just
know
said
if
that
he
he
did.
reads a lot.
Like, I mean, like, I'm not gonna gatekeep. If you say you're a fantasy fan, you are. But like, usually when people love reading stories and consuming them, they're quick to talk about which ones are formative.
Yes.
It's usually right at the tip of our fingertips. Don't ask for favorites.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Mm-mm.
But like in terms of like
I read Lord of the Rings when I was younger, or whatever. Like, yeah, it's usually like he could spit it out, and I mean, I'd have to go back, but I don't remember him.
No,
saying
the only thing he mentioned that he read was 17 to 20 of
Was
Sanderson's books. Which,
Sanderson?
So
Oh,
you're
he mentioned-
maybe he's mad because he's like, why didn't you hire me to work at Dragon Steel? I'm your ultimate fan. There's
Maybe
something.
that's what it is. Maybe he got fired. He put in an application and they were like, no.
Ex-employee.
I mean, I will say Dragonsteel, you have to be local, and it sounds like this person's from California, right? Didn't he say like, I can't
Yeah,
believe
San
I traveled
Francisco.
from
He's a
blah
San-
blah blah.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
definitely
from San Fran.
I bet you he lives in a very nice apartment in San Fran.
I mean, San Francisco is expensive anyways. You have to be pretty affluent to survive there.
Yes.
I think he's good.
Yeah, I mean, it was really weird reading the article. It truly felt like, I don't know. It didn't feel like if he truly was a part of geek or nerd culture, he was on our side.
Yeah.
Like it didn't.
He was
It felt like one of those
I'm not like other
gatekeepers.
nerds. Like, okay.
I'm a cool nerd.
It vaguely reminded me of a time when I had one of my friends read Sanderson, and he liked Elantris, but really didn't like Mistborn. And he's like, "Oh, this is so pretentious." And then I found out he liked Wheel of Time, and I read Wheel of Time. And I'm like, "Sir, we need to come back. We need to come back.
Oh god. I
You
still
can
have to
dislike
finish
this
Wheel of
book, but I
Time.
need
It's
you to
small.
unpack for me how this is not also that. I need to unpack it, in a fun friend way."
let's break it down. Let's just
Mistborn pretentious. That's an interesting one.
yeah.
Yeah, he then read
That's not an
Stormlight, and
adjective that I've
he's
heard.
turned around
I don't
on
think
it.
it's,
I think it was just
dense,
like,
but it's not pretentious. It's definitely a dense magic system. Getting
I
all
don't
of
know.
those metals straight in the
I
first
love it,
book,
though.
it's dense.
Yeah, but you don't even need to get them straight because he'll remind you every other page about what metal does what.
His greatest weakness for me these days as an author is his repetitiveness that's uninteresting. It's when he like really has his formula down, and I'm just like, you can step outside the lines. You can go over there.
We could just cut that little bit out. We know. We got it. But it's like, because these books, I feel like that part is almost written like for someone who's just coming in. But his books, not necessarily different series in the Cosmere, but like within a series, you can't just jump in. Like you can't just go into book 2. And it seems like all those things are like almost like on last week's episode. And it's like, no. We read the first one. We know. Like, in the beginning, you could give a refresher, but then after that, it's like, okay. And see, again, you could be a fan and also critique something, Jason.
So that's where I'm just confused. If he actually read as much as he said he did, he would have seen the growth because he stopped being as repetitive as he was in Mistborn. He stopped being trigonometry man if they pushed directly behind them on the screw that was 6/8 of an inch wide.
His
Like,
action
he
scenes
stopped
have
doing
improved
that.
dramatically. I mean,
Yes.
they're not my favorite, but they've improved dramatically.
But it's like, so did you read any of those, Jason?
But
Like,
that's
I
what
still don't
way
like
is
his
true?
first person writing. His first person writing grates on me every perspective I've ever read first person Sanderson.
Ooh, so you're really loving Secret Project 2, this first person good time.
It's not my least favorite. It's not my least favorite. But every time he writes a first person point of view book, I'm like, Sanderson, this is not how most brains work. Is this how your brain works? Fair.
It
fine.
might be.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Well,
Remember when we were talking about spectrums? We're all on it
because
somewhere.
You've read Skyward, so you've met Spencer, and you know how
Yeah.
Spencer's a melodramatic queen,
Mhm.
and everything has to just be these big grandeur gestures in her brain. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, fine, this is a little extra. That is
Spencer,
every first person.
I relate to her.
I related to Spencer. I really liked Spencer, but
Wait,
I'm
you're
a bit
extra, Jess? No.
I think Spencer's fine. I'm just, when I'm first person, I'm like, we are repeating thought cycles a lot, and it
But
happens a lot with David and Reckoners.
I feel like first person perspectives can be the more difficult. I feel like they can get really grating really quickly if they're not done well in general.
But there was so much fodder for him. If he really wanted to talk about how Sando can be repetitive, he could have whipped out so much stuff from Mistborn.
Mhm.
But
He
uses,
just didn't
like,
whip out the very, very repetitive stuff. He whipped out something about Zen. I don't even remember the quote from Mistborn.
No, he whipped out some description of an atmosphere or something that was like tranquil solitude and quiet or something. And I was like, well, descriptions being repetitive is kind of like, people do that on purpose. That's like a poetic device. But if we're talking repetitive structure,
I want to know what he
think is what you were
actually
going for.
reads. What does he actually
Like,
read?
Does he have a
Office
good
and
read?
just
Can we
circle
find
jerks
his
to it
good reads?
on a yearly basis?
Oh my god, that'd be so funny.
Does he have a good read?
I don't
Jason?
know. I doubt it.
What is his name?
Jason.
Jason
I
what?
need him to come to the front.
Kehe.
What is it?
Kehe. Kehe?
Kehe. Goodreads. We're sleeping
I
live.
doubt he's there, guys.
But
Goodreads
like,
is
wouldn't it be
such a
so funny
niche
if
platform.
he was?
I don't know. There is a
One thing I do like
Wait.
about Goodreads, even though I hate its platform, is that it does nostalgically make me feel like it's 2009 all the time. Like,
'Cause
there's
it
a
is
little
there.
nostalgia there now.
It
I've
is.
moved
It
on.
is 2009 when you log into Goodreads, because why on the app can I not directly reply to somebody's comment?
I don't know. I mean, I
I-
barely use Goodreads. I use it when I need to look up like information about books in terms of like general ratings and stuff. But I in theory track on Storygraph. But have I written reviews for like anything I've read this year? And we're 3 months in. Nope.
Not to be hateful, but his like picture on his Wired profile is exactly what I would expect from this kind of artsy fartsy attitude that he had
Did
in
I
his
not
article
see
with his
that?
little
you
like
can
diamond
totally be
print,
hateful.
black and white photograph with
Does
a
he
monocle.
look like he would have read all of Dune and like with his entire chest loved it?
Oh god.
Yes. Because
Oh,
there's
this
even like an
picture,
after
this
effect
black
where
and
there's,
white
like,
double picture thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awful.
It tracks.
Oh, that's him.
It's awful.
Now
Are you gonna
everything
share the
is making
picture, Jess,
sense.
so I can see it? I'm not looking this up. I'm
Well,
not
you just have to
clicking on this
Google his
article.
name. You can just
Oh
Google
my
his name. It comes
lord.
up. Well, he
Here's our
doesn't
guy.
have a Goodreads under his name, but he may have a Goodreads in some other fashion. But he does seem like the kind of person that would find that Goodreads was beneath him.
He
So
because
he might
Jason
not be on it.
Key certainly does something. He definitely lives somewhere. Yeah, you do something, and you don't do it well.
He's just like, he is what he hates. Maybe that's the thing, is he saw too much of himself in Sanderson because he's really pretentious and doesn't know how to write very compelling things. Like, if he's not writing salacious things, the actual structure of these sentences and the structure of the piece doesn't make sense.
Like, one of his things, this has his article. It says nobody knows how to watch movies anymore. What does
Oh
that mean?
God.
I don't even
click
on
on
wanna.
anything.
I'm
I don't
not.
want
I'm
it.
not. Yeah.
Nope.
So Jason,
He seems like he'd be insufferable on a date.
It-
That's what he seems
he would
like.
just talk about himself the entire time. You would never get a word in.
He is that guy. I think I went on a date with a guy very much like this, where I didn't. First of all, I don't bring up how much I hate other people's media that they put on their OkCupid or whatever. That's not a first date item. Your first date item isn't attacking someone's faves. I didn't even bring up Sanderson. We spend 45 minutes him derailing Sanderson on this coffee date. And I'm just like, So you don't want that second date. We're just talking about books.
We're
We're just,
done
that's
here.
what we're doing. Okay, here we are.
Well, that's a wrap. Wow.
Thanks
Well,
for coffee.
That's just like no social cues. It's just zero.
This guy seems like the worst. Jason, if you ever watch this, kick rocks. And I mean that in the rudest way possible.
I feel like I have some litfic, suggestions I could give him if he wants more pretentious literature. I have a few that he could
He'd probably
read.
like White Noise, which freaking Sean made
Oh,
me read,
yeah, he'd
and I
probably
never
like
want to
that.
read any more literary fiction.
I'm telling you, Roger, there's good lit fic. It's not all pretentious bullshit.
It's not, but some of it is pretentious and still good.
Yeah, there's a range.
Like,
There's
I think
pretentious
I
bullshit,
want
there's
just-
pretentious good.
I want Jess to read Betty. Because I feel like you'll get the same amount of like just trauma and like crying from A Little Life without like all of the
That author
self-harm.
gives me.
I do not want to
unease,
read A
though.
Little Life. You said this is A Little Life?
No, I want you to read
No,
Betty,
it's Betty
not A
by
Little
the
Life.
Ohio author who claims she's indigenous, and I question it. She's a weird author.
She's a
bothers
weird
me.
author.
Is it
but-
Tiffany McDaniel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you question it? Well, that's a whole nother.
What?
discussion.
Why so you liked this, or you? Were
I
just
love
traumatized?
Betty. Oh, I love Betty.
Just don't read Shuggy Bane because I hate Shuggy Bane.
Oh, I hate the cover.
Oh, I don't really like Shiggy Bang, but I liked Young Mungo better.
No, I might hate that cover or both.
They're both like very similar.
I
They're
don't
basically the same book, but like sort of different timelines. But I really do need his third book to not be the exact same book. Like he needs to set it somewhere else.
He
I
needs
don't
to
want to
stop
hear.
being quite so autobiographical.
I
Betty
don't want to
was
hear
born
about
to
Margaret
backslide.
Thatcher anymore. I'm tired of hearing about Margaret Thatcher.
Margaret
Please.
Thatcher.
It
Because
takes
he
place in
sets
like the 80s
everything in the
Scotland.
80s in Scotland.
Okay.
Everything is the exact same book. It's just one's like a young gay
Oh.
boy and one's like a slightly older gay boy.
Does the second book still have
Like-
like parental abuse?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, no.
But it's better. It's a better book.
I mean, I'm sure. I think my
Better
issues
parental
with,
abuse.
it is top.
Yes.
The best parental abuse.
Now I'm mad at you, Alyssa.
Why?
No.
you should
looking
just
at
pick
this
it up
book.
tomorrow, Jess. Try to read like 5 pages of it.
Jess,
That I need to start today. If I'm
do you know how big Infinite Jest is?
1, 2. Oh
It's
my!
like over 1,000 pages.
How
Just
long
try.
It's
You just do
huge.
5 pages at a time until
And
I'll read
wait,
it for the rest of the year.
there are also like footnotes, so you have to flip back and forth.
boo. That is so bad.
But it doesn't appear to have any songs and I haven't heard that it's full of like ween and like feces
What an
with like Gravity's
amazing
Radio.
pitch.
Because Gravity's
What an
Rainbow is just
amazing-
like limericks, ween, and just feces.
All right, so we're
I mean, it sounds like I
thoroughly
might like
off
that better because
topic.
at least
Jess,
the ween would keep me entertained.
Jess, bring us back. Help us end the
Oh,
video.
yes.
gone down
So,
derailed us.
about the article. Any final thoughts on the articles or on Brandon himself? Alyssa, actually, I'm just going to ask you all a question. Alyssa, will you read any other Sanderson ever?
If I ever finish Wheel of Time,
What book are you on?
5 or 6.
All right.
still
So
down.
you're on when it's
Nice.
still
Tyler
good.
book.
Oh, it's still good now.
Theoretically, that's the best it will ever get.
Theoretically, that's what people claim. Not me, but people.
One
Book
day,
12 might be the best for me in that series, but
is
Book
that
12
what it
is
ended?
actually maybe the best. Maybe. I haven't ranked
Wow.
them yet.
Roger, what's your favorite Sanderson book that you've read?
Warbreaker.
I love Warbreaker. Angela, don't answer. I know it's a launch.
It's when his humor worked for me, when it was like a little bit more snarky and a little bit less dude bro-y feeling to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the biggest problem I had. Like, I read Secret Project 2 yesterday, and like,
He's
The humor
doing
is
It's
it.
just
a
not
dude
vibe.
bro book. I was 0% surprised when the only other review was the one who gave 3 stars to Tress and gave 5 stars to this. And like, yeah, that tracks.
I just don't see him as dude, bro.
Well, this
is
book
the
is-
most dude bro-y action flick I have ever read. If you cast The Rock as the main
Oh,
character
no.
tomorrow, I would buy it.
Oh no!
It's very Andy Weir. It's super
Oh, this
Or
is
like,
gonna be
it's
good
more
for
Andy
me.
Weir than Blake Crouch, but it's that vague. It's that.
Yeah, his inspirations were The Bourne Identity and
I had fun
Project
with
Hail
that
Mary.
movie. I did not like that book. Very interesting. I still haven't read Secret Project 1 because, what's reading. Angela, outside of Elantris, where would you tell someone to start with Brandon Sanderson? Or is it Elantris?
If why you want to read Sanderson is for the Cosmere experience, I always say publication order. If you just want to read a story by Brandon Sanderson and see if he's an author for you, I do think Warbreaker is probably the most well-rounded of the works that like show what he can do in terms of like action scenes and plotting and character. And it's like contained, and it has a lot of tropes people are familiar with, like Beauty and the Beast retelling-esque and stuff.
And magic system. I like the magic in that one.
Yeah. So and I feel like you get a good taste of like his political intrigue and like his high action moments and like stuff like, so I think it's a good well-rounded sampling of how he arts. And from there you can decide if you like how he arts, you know?
Yes, before you write an article about it. Mm-hmm.
I don't know that's all of his adult stuff. Obviously, I guess if you like young adult stuff, don't ask me because I don't read a lot of it, and I don't like what he does with it.
I mean, if you like young adult, then Tress would be appropriate for you. It's technically adult, but it's very accessible.
Yeah, I mean, but I just meant more like his young adult stuff reads really different from Tress to me, like extremely.
No, 100%.
Yeah,
I mean, the only young adult thing I've read by him was Cytonic and all of that, but
yeah, me too. Different. Yeah. Well, you've heard it here, folks. We got to the bottom of it. Jason's just a hater. Who's been slighted, or he thinks he's cooler than us nerds, but nerds are cool.
He's that troll waiting underneath the internet bridge.
Yes. Stand tall and firm in your nerddom. Go to your conventions, read your books, buy your merch. Okay, it is fine. It's cool to be you.
And don't shower if you want to. Live your life.
Yay!
No. You must shower once. There's like a 3-2-1 rule at conventions. I don't know if people know this, but there is a 3-2-1 rule. Okay. It's like get at least 3 hours of sleep. You need to have 2 meals, and you have to shower once a day. That's the 3-2-1 rule.
That's nice.
I mean, if you're
nerds
going
have
out
this down.
You should shower if you're going out in public, but sometimes you're a little stressy and depressy, and you don't want to shower.
I was assuming we were talking convention life.
Yes.
Correct. If you're in your own home, I'm not going to judge you.
Exactly. So I know you learned a lot more about Sanderson and got a more well-rounded conversation than reading that article. So don't give it another click. But thanks for joining us here at World Hoppers. We'll see you in the next one. Toodaloo.